Is it a coincidence that 3 convicted pedophiles were working at the largest children's television network during the peak of its success and popularity? What if I told you that there was also a convicted pedophile managing the children that were often cast on the network's shows? What if
So 4 convicted pedophiles working at Nickelodeon during its peak.
I told you that many of the underage girls were forced to kiss men over the age of 18 on camera? And then what if you found out that multiple of these young victims grew up and were caught performing inappropriate sexual acts with children themselves?
Dude, Drake Bell, I never got people feel so sorry for him. I get what happened to him when he was tragic. What happened to him when he was young was tragic, but he turns around and does the same thing.
Repeating the cycle of abuse. These are not rumors, these are facts. When you combine these facts with the realization that many of the jokes, physical comedy, outfits, and even random pieces of the set were sexual innuendos, at some point you'd start to eliminate the possibility of this being a coincidence and start thinking this was all by design. Today I'm going to break down exactly how a powerful network of executives...
You don't think Drake Bell is guilty? I mean, yeah, it's a cycle in a way. For real, Maya. It's the same thing, he pleaded guilty to that. I'm saying, did what? Good night, Sammy. I don't know what he did. Drake Bell. Okay, so here's what happened. Drake Bell was caught. He met up with this person. He sexted them. He sent them lewd photos. They sent him lewd photos. He got it, originally it was for CP, so I can't say that we're on Twitch. Distributing CP, endangerment of a minor, blah blah blah, and his lawyer pleaded it down to insemination of harmful material on the internet to a minor and endangerment of a minor, and that's what he ended up taking in the end. So in the end, he did get a felony, but he managed to stay off the sex offenders registry. So that's the story of Drake Bell in his adult life.
Separated child actors from their families, have their actors depend on them for emotional support.
Ew, dude, look at him, bro. Look at him.
Then abuse their power to overwork these children, rake in billions in profits, silence anyone who dared to speak out, and then bragged about it in front of the whole world. And just like most organized crime operations...
No, bro, he definitely fucking did it, bro. Listen, like, people say, like, oh, well, his lawyer pleaded it down, he was found not guilty of those things. In the court documents, you can literally see the screenshots of the Instagram DMs. Like, bro, he literally sent, like, just in, like, the court documents of the, you guys can Google this, I'm sure you can find it. You can literally see the photos he sent her, and of course, like, where his dick is blurred out. But, like, even if somehow his lawyer got it off and he wasn't found guilty, you can still look at that and just be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, there's never any, like, and he was married with a kid during all this, too. Like, come on.
They typically funnel up to one top boss, the untouchable creator of this machine. Insert Dan Schneider, the man behind the camera, the esteemed Nickelodeon producer who created some of the most iconic children's television programs in history.
At the end of the day, I love it when the cast gets sassy with me because I get to write all the scripts with some very talented writers, but I can put them in any horrible predicament I choose.
Dan Schneider was a child actor himself, most notable for his role as Dennis on Head of the Class. During this time, he and his co-star Brian Robbins became great friends. The pair were later asked to co-host the second annual Kids' Choice Awards by a Nickelodeon producer called Albie Hecht. The 3 men struck a friendship and frequently discussed creating a project together. By 1993, Hecht had become a high-level executive at Nickelodeon and challenged Robbins to pitch him a children's television series that their new production studio could pitch to Nickelodeon. At the time, Nickelodeon was not yet the powerhouse it would become. The network struggled to become profitable in the 80s as they were losing millions of dollars per year. One year, they were actually the lowest viewed network out of all US cable channels. Early 90s cartoons like Doug, Rugrats, and
Dude, Doug was gas!
and Stimpy were allowing the network to pick up higher viewership, but their live-action shows struggled. So Brian recruited Dan, and they came up with a sketch comedy show like Saturday Night Live, but for children, called All That. Dan wrote in his personal blog, "We did a nationwide talent search and got very lucky. Every kid we ended up hiring for the original All That cast turned out to be fantastic.
Wow.
Josh Server, Kenan Thompson,
good.
Kel Mitchell,
awesome.
Katrina Johnson, Lori Beth Denberg, Angelique Bates, and Alyssa Reyes. Dan recalled that the show didn't test well, and that the network felt like kids wouldn't like a sketch comedy show, but they took a chance on him, and the show immediately became a huge success for Nickelodeon as soon as it aired. All That would go on to have 10 seasons and become one of the most culturally significant teen Nickelodeon shows of all time. Imagine how proud the executives were of Dan's performance. They were finally getting the big break they needed, and Nickelodeon was coming closer to becoming a profitable network. The only thing that could ruin their momentum would be some sort of scandal or reports of child abuse, and that's exactly what happened according to Angelique Bates, who was only 12 years old when the abuse began. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy.
Fuck yo,
for
sponsor,
the dog is
bitch.
dog champion. Dog C, and for me,
1996.
rep your team and make your own picks with Underdog.
From 1992 to 1996, I was a series regular on Nickelodeon's All That. I was only 12 years old, and that's when my nightmare began. I was physically, mentally, emotionally abused in front of the producers and cast members, and sometimes they could even hear me yelling.
Wow.
But nothing was done to help me until approximately 1996 when CPS was called. And
damn,
when
CPS was
came,
called to Nickelodeon.
I was pressured by all the adults that were set to protect me to stay silent. I did, and I have. But I can no longer stay silent, and I won't. My name is Angelique Bates, and I am an adult survivor of child abuse, and this is my story.
Angelique is the first known survivor who has spoken up against Nickelodeon's corrupt practices, and her story is extremely important because it also highlights the parents' involvement in such abuse. Angelique recalls Nickelodeon producers being upset that her mom was constantly supervising her.
They started having a bullseye for her was that she was one of the parents that was not going to leave me unattended on set, because by law, parents are supposed to be there. So they didn't like that fact. That
didn't even help her. I mean,
some parents would leave their kids unsupervised while they worked. They trusted the producers and did not want to interfere with their child's opportunity to build a career for themselves. Angelique's mother was not like that, and she even recalled a time where someone made a sexual advance towards her, and her mother threatened to sue the network. Unfortunately, Angelique's mother was also physically and emotionally abusive towards her, so she wasn't safe on set or at home.
That's crazy.
Double-edged sword with my mom. My mom's beating my ass, but then she's like protecting me from Nickelodeon all at the same time. Like, she blocked all that. Like I said, the reason why they started hating her was because she was blocking me from that, and because she was turning down sexual advances from it.
Angelique slowly received less and less work due to her mother's involvement, and believed she was blackballed by Nickelodeon because she and her mother could not be controlled. And because no wrongdoings were ever officially reported, All That ratings continued to soar. The series propelled the careers of cast members Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, who starred in the first All That spin-off, Kenan and Kel. The show originally aired on Nickelodeon for 4 seasons.
Like some of these child actors who've gone through all this, the money, the fame, the abuse of all these producers, and it's not just when they're kids, it's all the way up into their 20s of producers casting this, and then they do drugs and they party to this. Like, some of them, their brains are just so scrambled. The drugs, the rehab, like, poor Amanda Bynes, like, I believe she's truly tried to get together so many times, but, like, she's just so, like, gone, like just had so much happen to her, seen so much, like, so much stimulus, so much ups and downs, and, like, there's a couple others, you know, that are so fucked, like, Britney Spears is, like, so fucked in the head.
From 1996 to 2001, and was equally as successful as All That,
winning
the Favorite TV Show Award at the 1998 Kids' Choice Awards. They also starred in the Nickelodeon cult classic film, Good Burger. However, with Schneider in charge, not much changed behind the scenes.
I didn't even know he was
Taisha
in that
Hampton,
movie.
ex-wife of Kel Mitchell, spoke out on suspicious behavior she experienced on Nickelodeon sets. Taisha was married to Mitchell from 1999 to 2005, but they originally met on the set of Good Burger, where she was casted as an extra. She too backs up the claims that parents were not around.
And these parents, like Kel's parents, were not with him. All these parents of the kids on the show, their parents were not with him.
Separate the children from the
Good Burger
parents.
was
That
so
seems to be a
good.
theme with Nickelodeon. There are two main reasons why they likely did this. Firstly, it seems like Nickelodeon was trying to take advantage of loose child labor laws in Florida, where the shows were filmed. According to the 1998 Florida Child Labor Code, minors
Child like
aged
that.
15
Money,
and under
money,
could
money.
work 40 hours per week as long as it was during a holiday or summer vacation. 16 and 17-year-olds who
That's
graduated from high
crazy.
school or
What?
had their GED did not have to abide by any work hour restrictions. A school superintendent could also issue a waiver of
Holy
hours,
shit.
and there is no law that specifically states a parent must supervise their kid while their child is working. However, regardless of what the code says, child labor experts say the laws were rarely enforced or penalized when there was a violation. In 1992, Jeffrey Newman of the National Child Labor Committee said that child labor today is at a point where violations are greater than at any point during
Really?
the
Holy
1930s.
shit.
One report found that the
Great
average business
mind,
could
great minds
expect
think
to be
alike.
inspected once every 50 years or so.
I mean, they probably
Inspectors
look
spend
for
only about
parents
5% of their time
who
looking
give up,
into child
you
labor
know,
problems. Businesses across the entire
They'll look
nation were
away for
taking
money.
advantage of loose
You know what I
child
mean,
labor
Vamp?
laws in the 90s. Do
They're
you think
desperate,
Nickelodeon was any different?
you know,
Children are more susceptible to
corrupted.
exploitation and abuse in the workplace due to their vulnerability and lack of bargaining power. Think of how easy it would be for a TV producer to torment and gaslight a young actor if they weren't getting their lines
I
right
don't think
or
all that
performing to the
might
producer's standards.
know the
But if their parents were
business.
there on set witnessing their
Yeah.
child get scolded, they might cause a fuss. Producers want as little friction as possible, so it's not crazy to think that they probably cast talent with parents who stay out of their way. But once they
That's
do
what I
get the parents out
said.
of the way, what do they do with the kids?
Because we would get into
Yo,
clubs.
Judy Garland's story is so terrible.
And we were young.
Judy
like
Garland died completely broke too.
16, 17 years old. We'd be in clubs. And the
It's
people
crazy.
on the
Judy
set
Garland, all the money she made was their parents took it all.
that made us fake IDs. And
Not
so
be
then I
there.
started thinking, I was like, wait.
They made everyone
what?
fake IDs.
And then they were talking about orgies, and they were talking about like people on the set would show like pornos, and they'd give us
Kids?
alcohol.
Those were kids, like young kids on that set,
Yeah, these are grown 30-year-old men and women.
showing this to the kids. 'Cause
16,
Jesus.
17, 15, 14-year-old kids. But another one of the cast
Wow.
members was like cleaning Dan Schneider's car with a bikini on. And now at this time she had been 15, 16 years old.
What the
Or other time they would
fuck?
have like parties where the parents wouldn't be there, and they'd give us alcohol. And another one of the people on the cast was giving blowjobs to the producers.
wow, one of the kids.
And they were kids.
Tracy Brown, whose son Brian Hearn was cast on All That
What
for
the
season 7
fuck?
and 8, tells a similar story from a mother's perspective.
Wow.
Because there were many times on that set where they're like, hey, we want to invite Brian to a party. And I'm like, hey, just Brian? And they go, yes. And I'm like, no. And they don't like moms that take control of their child. But
What?
I heard her
It's turning.
things. So guess what? You don't need to like me. And they were like, well, bye-bye. And I was like, let's go.
Jeez.
I was not going to do anything for the money. Like, y'all need to understand, I'm that woman. I'm not going to do
W
anything
mom.
that might compromise my son, not even for the income.
But many even suspect that the producer's perversion may have been
Wow.
scripted into the shows, starting with Kyra
No,
on
for
Kenan and
real. If once I got older, so I did this personally happened for me probably like 3-4 years ago during the pandemic. I was working at GNC and Lowe's, and I was just before streaming and social media, and I just broken up with the girl I dated for 12 years, and I was just in a really weird spot. And I remember all I did was work and go to the gym, and then I would just watch stuff. Like I watched so much anime, and at this one point for like 2 months, I remember I just went back and watched. I don't remember what it was on. Just watched all like old iCarly, Victoria, Sweet Life is I Can like just all these old shows and stuff. And I was just like remembering like watching as an adult like all the sexual innuendos and jokes and weird things and weird scenes that they made them do that like as a kid I never thought twice about.
Kel, who was just 12 years old but was always trying to flirt and make sexual advances on the much older Kel. She would refer to him as her boyfriend despite him being obviously uninterested because she is a child. At the same time that Keenan and Kel were huge stars, one All That cast member emerged and became the most iconic Nickelodeon star of all time, Amanda Bynes. At just 10 years old, Amanda stood out amongst her peers and showed.
Yeah, dude, I used to watch this stuff in front of my parents, and my parents would say things were just so different back then. Like, I remember I don't remember what show it was, but I think it was actually one of these guys' videos, and there was even a Nickelodeon show, and they had an example, and one of the jokes in the show, and this was like, maybe it was iCarly or Drake and Josh, but something like that, where one of the jokes was about the husband hitting the wife, and they played the laugh track, and everyone laughed, and it was literally, like a domestic violence joke, and like a Drake and Josh or something. I can't remember what it was. Is when these guys videos talking about it, we watched. I was like, holy shit.
Showcased her comedic talents through various characters and sketches. As a preteen, she was maturely confident and comfortable on screen. According to Leon Frierson, who was cast on All That since season 1, Schneider showed clear favoritism for Bynes. We had to go to school on set. There would be times when Amanda would just be missing, he recalled in the docuseries.
So here's the craziest thing. So at this point, hundreds of Nickelodeon stars, from stars to extras, side characters, spoke out. Blah, blah, blah. But the crazy thing is, and they've said it in the last documentary we watched on here, the two girls who were the most closest to all the other actors said it was the worst for these two girls. They're the only two who haven't personally spoken out about Dan Schneider yet. And that's Amanda Cosgrove, who was with Dan Schneider from the time she was 8 or 9 years old on Drake and Josh, up to the time she was 20 on iCarly, and then Ariana Grande. They're the only two, and I think they have the most tea and dirt, and I respect their privacy, not talking about it or ever saying anything about it and stuff like that. But it's just like I said, imagine things happen behind closed doors, the years, the parties, the trips, the late night, coaching, like just like you're only seeing what got out into the public. Like, imagine what happened on the inside.
A lot of times we would hear she would be with Dan, pitching ideas and writing. We see them grow closer to each other on set. He continued, Amanda Bynes' parents were very hands-on in her career, specifically her dad. His presence was always felt. A big part of that was his relationship with Dan Schneider. Like we said before, hands-on parents were not wanted on Nickelodeon's set. That is, unless they are bending to the interests of Dan Schneider. Despite the favoritism, Dan never planned on giving Amanda her own show because he claims he never wanted to be on children's television. He initially created and helped produce a series called
They Are Some of the More Successful
Guys Like Us for the United Paramount Network at their primetime 8 p.m. slot. Guys Like Us revolves around two young men, Sean
Jeanette did speak up.
Barker and Jared Harris. The pair are forced to look
Jeanette McCurdy is one of the is really brave. She wrote a book about it. She spoke up a lot about it for a very long time. And so after she got off Sam and Cat, apparently something bad happened on there. And that happened during Sam and Cat, and she wrote a book about it. But she got blackballed for a while. Like, work is really good. Like, she's like, I remember seeing like an interview of like a podcast she was doing, and she was like, she couldn't find really any acting, like blah blah blah, and like yeah. So I don't know. But I know she's been spoke up about it for a while.
After Jared's 6-year-old brother, Maestro, who comes to live with them after Jared's father accepts a job opportunity overseas.
Why don't you go wash your hands? They're clean. Well, then go wash your feet.
Dan's sitcom designed for adults was an utter failure as he was not funny nor creative enough to keep adults entertained. It was canceled after one season due to abysmal ratings, so he shifted his focus to creating a show around Amanda.
Weird.
The Amanda Show was a sketch comedy television program that had a very similar look, feel, and comedic style as All That and Keenan and Kel. Schneider struck gold again. The Amanda Show became the highest rated live-action television program on Nickelodeon during its run. Amanda portrayed various characters that would become iconic, such
that show I only saw that show on reruns as I got older, because like that show obviously came out when I was like, less than 1 year old, so fucked up, real.
As Judge Trudy, Crazy Courtney,
the dancing lobsters,
and Amanda's obsessive fan Penelope Taint.
Penelope.
I'm Amanda's #1 fan, please.
And it took us 20 years to realize that her last name was a sexual innuendo. People also think that her catchphrase, Amanda please, was built off the phrase, a man to please, which would be such a deep, detailed level of innuendo that it's kind of hard to believe. However, as this video goes on, it just seems more and more possible. People today also believe that her sketch called Amanda's Jacuzzi may have been inappropriate since the whole concept was her as a 13-year-old interviewing mostly grown men in a hot tub. And of course, another foot joke.
Is it also true that you can put both of your feet inside your mouth at the same time?
I don't know. No.
Even Dan decided to jump in the jacuzzi with Amanda.
Jeez.
Today my special guest is the executive producer of The Amanda Show, Dan Schneider.
Hi.
Now you're the executive producer of the show.
Yes, I'm the executive producer and the head writer.
People believe Dan was almost bragging by creating lightly sexual conduct into his kids' shows, like the Spitballer 5000, which was a phallic object that the kids had to blow into to launch a giant spitball at someone. Behind-the-scenes footage indicates that Dan and Amanda were very close, which is why it was shocking that The Amanda Show abruptly ended in 2002, just 3 years after it aired on Nickelodeon. In an interview with The Times, Bynes explained that she decided to leave for other opportunities. I was having fun, but at 15, you don't want to be doing what you did when you were 12.
Damn, bro.
Schneider
Imagine how much success at 12. You're like now you're 15. You're like, I'm on to bigger and better. That's crazy.
also commented on her exit with,
Dude,
I've seen kids.
Life in the 2000s, early 90s, you just had to be there, bro. It was different. What up, Lethal? Now everything is so like plastic and skin level deep and fly by. Like people forget about things in one day. Like 15 for real. Back then, bro, like shit happened. Shit went down. Like shit meant something. We've missed you, Lethal. I'm glad you're here. You got this, Spliff.
Kids in her position experiment with drugs and be too promiscuous. But Amanda has avoided all of that. My wife, who knows her, says she's almost like Marsha Brady in that she's so clean-cut and wholesome. This quote seems characteristically odd from Dan. Like she was just talking about transitioning to more mature roles like her sitcom What I Like About You, and he had to bring up drugs and sex for some reason. Many years later, cast members would come out and speak about how they perceived Amanda behind the scenes. Actress Chelsea Brummett, who co-starred on All That, recalled, she was closed off to everyone. You'd ask her a question and she'd give you a quick answer to end the conversation. She was always defiant with her dad, but she tried to hide things from her dad. She always seemed like she was trying to hide things. They would butt heads. This recountment does line up with the timeline of 2003 where Amanda sought to be emancipated from her parents at just 17 years old. In June of 2003, Amanda's agent, manager, and lawyer were all abruptly fired by her parents. The young star, now 17, was seeking legal emancipation from her parents, who were furious when they discovered that the reps had concealed this fact from them. Unfortunately, Amanda was not able to successfully get emancipated. During this rough patch in her life, Bynes reportedly leaned on Schneider and his wife, Lisa Lillian, for support. She was spending a lot of time with us, said Lillian, but she never left her family's house. This direct quote from Dan's wife is strong evidence that Dan and Amanda were close offset. Amanda has spoken out very strongly against her father and maybe at the time looked at Schneider as a replacement father figure. Dan also recently recounted a night where Amanda ran away from home.
One night, it was very late, well after midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning, phone rang.
I can't believe these people are still alive
nowadays. She was upset, she was in distress. She had some conflict with her parents, I think her father, and she called me. I was immediately concerned about her safety. I called someone who I knew was fairly nearby.
Neck beard is pissing
that person
me
was
off.
able to go and pick her up. Then I knew she was safe. I felt better. She ended up being taken to the police.
As much as people blame Dan for the downfall of Amanda's career, or claim that he had suspicious involvement that's deeper and more inappropriate, throughout Amanda's whole life and numerous public spirals, she never blamed or accused Dan Schneider of anything. All of her anger and horrible accusations were towards her biological father. However, the cloud of mystery and potentially inappropriate behavior surrounding Amanda, as well as her obviously broken family life, seemed to be a common gray area Dan found himself in with his stars. Over the years, some of the most prominent stars like Jamie Lynn Spears, Jeanette McCurdy, and Ariana Grande all had absent fathers. On one hand, you can blame the parents. On another, you could look at Dan as a predatory opportunist, or maybe it's a little bit of both. But there was a real convicted predator who worked underneath Dan Schneider. Jason Handy, a production assistant who worked on All That and The Amanda Show, exchanged email addresses and phone numbers with parents and kids who thought he was a friendly and helpful presence on set. You thought, oh, I could be friends with this person, said MJ, the mother of a former actress on The Amanda Show, who was identified as Brandy. The mother was mortified when she saw her 11-year-old daughter looking at a graphic email from Handy.
It was a picture of him naked, masturbating. And he said he had sent it to her because he wanted her to see that he was thinking of her.
Her daughter left the entertainment industry after that email. Handy was arrested in April of 2003 after law enforcement received a tip about him. When the police investigated his home, they found over 1,700 images of young girls in erotic poses, as well as 7 videos on CD files of children
engaged. This is the Dan Schneider stuff. This is one of his producers.
Engaged in sexually explicit conduct. In Handy's personal diary, he wrote sentences.
This is Dan Schneider's assistant producer, chat.
Like, I am a pedophile full-blown. He added, I have really been giving into my desire for little girls these past few weeks. And then he detailed his day-to-day struggle on how he could find a victim that he could sexually assault. In 2004, Handy was sentenced to 6 years in prison after being convicted on 2 felony counts, one of lewd acts on a child and one of distributing sexually explicit material by email, as well as on a misdemeanor charge related to sexual exploitation of a child. Many of you are probably thinking 6 years is not enough. And surprise, surprise, he got out and in 2014 committed 2 other felony sex offender violations of the child.
Fuck? He got out, then went back for doing it again?
Allegedly, Handy's case prompted Nickelodeon to toughen its background checks for all employees, trying to prevent this from happening again. Yet somehow, this was not even close to the last time a pedophile would infiltrate Nickelodeon's network. Actor Drake Bell formed a bond with the dialogue coach Brian Peck during the 2nd season of The Amanda Show. Peck, who has no relation to Drake's co-star Josh Peck, would invite Drake to his house for acting lessons. These lessons were supervised by Drake's father, Joe, who was told that Brian Peck was a skilled coach who would help Drake secure more acting opportunities. However, over time, Joe became uncomfortable with their relationship.
And unfortunately, I started seeing Brian start to just hang around Drake too much. And it didn't set well with me. Drake would be in the dressing room or something, and in would pop Brian, and just touch Drake. You know, do things that, wait a second, what are you doing? Drake can put that on himself. And the thing is, this is in front of people.
Joe expressed his concerns with production personnel and said he was uncomfortable with Brian, only to be called homophobic because of Brian's sexual orientation. Therefore, Joe backed off. Once this got back to Brian, he manipulated Drake into severing ties with his father/manager, suggesting that Joe was sabotaging Drake's career. Peck subsequently integrated himself into multiple areas of Bell's life and became a father figure for the young actor. Eventually, Peck convinces Drake's mother to let him stay at his house during auditions. These predators entice the children with fame and fortune, convince them that their parents—
Bro, and this Peck guy was also Leonardo DiCaprio's coach. Get that. So before he did the Drake Bell, he was coaching Leonardo DiCaprio. This is him and Leo together.
Parents are trying to hold them back.
Yeah, I've heard about this
totally
guy.
isolate them and do who knows what behind closed doors. It's likely
and
that
dude,
then totally
this video right here, he's like, Leo, give him a good flex. You're looking like a hunk. I don't know why this guy's not. I guess it would be weird to play all the tapes. And Leo's like 13 in this. Look at Leo now. Like I actually saw this actual video in this documentary about this guy.
Isolate them and do who knows what behind closed
all,
doors.
Like,
it's likely that all the kids
I guess
who made it out
it would be weird to show all the clips and weird stuff they've shown, but I think that would like add gravity to like what they've done. But it would be weird to show like the weird sexual innuendos and jokes they've used and blah blah blah.
Scathed were because of parents who stepped in and removed their child from the situation before it was too late. However, the more popular the actor was, such as Drake Bell, the more difficult it became to remove them from the industry. Sadly, with Brian Peck and Drake Bell, we do know what happened behind closed doors. When Drake slept on Brian's couch, the sexual assault began.
I was sleeping on the couch where I would usually sleep, and I woke up to him. I just opened my eyes, I woke up, and he was sexually assaulting me. Why don't you think of the worst stuff that someone can do to somebody as a sexual assault, and that'll answer your question.
Drake wouldn't tell anyone for several months. The abuse persisted until Drake began spending more time at a girlfriend's house. One day, when he was supposed to meet with Brian, Drake said he did not want to hang out. Brian then started calling his phone nonstop. When Drake failed to answer, Brian obsessively started calling his girlfriend's house, which is when the girlfriend's mother suspected something was wrong and took Drake to her family therapist. He later detailed the abuse to his own mother, who called the police. I had to be excruciatingly detailed about every single thing and time that it had happened with two absolute strangers. The worst part was I had to make a phone call to Brian and get him to admit to what he'd done. The police monitored a wired phone call with Brian, who broke into a full-on confession that led to his arrest. The investigation was conducted privately, and Bell remained unidentified to the public for several years due to his age at that time. Drake did tell Dan Schneider about this situation right before the trial.
And when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far.
Dialogue coach, that's
and
insane.
I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need? But Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day, she came to me at the time and she said, Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. And
this is crazy.
Would you help me with my speech for the judge?
Not the fake crying.
Of course. And I did.
During Brian Peck's trial, numerous prominent figures in the entertainment industry wrote letters of support vouching for his character, including James Marsden, Taran Killam, Growing Pains star Alan Thicke, Boy Meets World actors Will Friedle and Ryder Strong, among others. Some of these figures, including Friedle and Strong, have since expressed their regret over writing the letters and stated that they were manipulated by Peck's misinformation. Brian Peck was convicted of child molestation in 2004, pleading no contest to a charge of oral copulation with a minor under 16 and a charge of performing a lewd act with a 14 or 15-year-old. He spent only 16 months in prison and was mandated to register as a sex offender. And if you were surprised at that abysmally low sentencing, Peck got out and secured a job working for Disney's The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody in 2006.
That's crazy. After he went to jail for pedophilia, he got a job on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on Disney Channel,
where he voiced London Tipton's Talking Mirror for 3 episodes. The Disney Channel hired a registered sex offender. Despite these horrible circumstances, Drake remained in the industry and would go on to star alongside Josh Peck in their legendary buddy comedy, Drake and Josh, which again caused the network's ratings to explode to new heights. The series premiere was watched by 3.2 million viewers, the network's highest-rated series premiere in nearly 10 years. Drake and Josh episodes regularly saw viewership upwards of 5, 6, 7 million. As of 2006, the show ranked consistently among the 10 most watched cable shows across all of television, and you could just add Zoe 101 to the list of Dan's dominant programs, which saw an average of 3 million viewers per episode. It was on the set of Zoe 101 where even more photos emerged of Dan getting a little too comfortable with the cast, particularly Erin Sanders, who was merely a child being held and coddled on Dan's lap. You can also see this photo where Dan's hand is resting on the child's lower back. Zoe 101 also had 34 different kissing scenes across its 4 seasons. While this may not seem that strange for a teen drama show, it did often lead to underage female actresses kissing over 18-year-old males. Brando Eaton was 20 years old and Victoria Justice was 14.
He was how old?
Year-old males. Brando Eaton was 20 years old and Victoria Justice was 14.
Bro, as a 20-year-old actor, I don't get this off
Victoria
the screen.
at
That's
this
weird.
time
Sorry. Why would you not say no? Like, nah, I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Also had to kiss Jaren Vosberg, who was 18. And get this, 12-year-old Jamie Lynn Spears had to kiss 22-year-old Justin Timberlake on the set of All That, and Justin dated Britney Spears, which is Jamie's sister, 3 years earlier. Also, this Zoe 101 scene resurfaced recently, and many believe it to be a sexual innuendo. Spears' co-star, Alexa Nicolas, recalled Dan making a crew member squirt the syringe of goo at Spears over and over again. It's also important to remember that all of the information that you now know from this video.
And these are scenes that got out. These aren't deleted scenes. It's scenes to make it through production. Or, bro, Dan probably has a bunch of crazy, creepy. Or he definitely has like a huge dungeon of creepy shit.
Video was
He's been in the industry for 50, 60 years doing this shit.
Totally unknown by the public at the time. All the allegations and predatory behavior was all silenced before they could ever reach headlines. Barely any media outlets were reporting on why pedophiles were allowed to work on set. Survivors were scared to speak their truth, and even if they wanted to, they would have to go through a publicist or rely on a potentially corrupt media outlet to tell their story the right way. All anyone saw was the final product on television, so we assumed everything was consensual and safe and approved by people who had the best interests of the children in mind. Even if the network was suspicious of Dan and his production staff, which they weren't, they were going to do anything and everything to protect his reputation because Nickelodeon was red hot. At this point, they had been the #1 network in viewers aged 2 to 11 for over a decade.
All because, bro, they kept him, his reputation clean, swept everything on the rug, made sure no one found out anything, all because they were making money.
We're raking in millions of viewers and billions of dollars. Dan had more power than ever.
Imagine how many people looked the other way for money. Like, how many people it took. Like, how many people, because there's so many people working in a big business like this. You know what I mean? Big company, corporation, whatever. Like, how many producers, how many executives, how many investors, how many shareholders.
About to unleash all of his sick fantasies through iCarly. The basic premise of iCarly was that Carly Shay, played by previous Drake and Josh co-star Miranda Cosgrove, and her friends Sam and Freddie, played by Jeanette McCurdy and Nathan Kress, produce a web show from Carly's older brother's apartment. The show resonated with the real-world rise of online content creation and the growing influence of social media platforms like YouTube during the 2000s. The show within a show encouraged fan interaction by incorporating segments that invited viewers to participate in the show's interactive elements. Additionally, the characters often responded to fan mail and viewer submissions on their web show, further blurring.
Remember the iCarly website they used to have up where you could like look at it and look like the real iCarly? Like, that was so cool.
The lines between fiction and reality. Like, take a look at this time they called a 12-year-old fan.
Do you have any questions for Sydney?
I follow your Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 12.
No way, I just turned 16.
You're 12?
Yes.
I'm like a little over double that.
Yeah, Jerry's all old. So what do you like about iCarly?
I love it. It's really funny.
Anything else you want to know about iCarly or any questions?
Why is Dan on the phone with a 12-year-old?
Anything?
No.
No, you're all set?
Nope.
Thank you.
You know what I know.
Would you like us to get on a plane and come to your house?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's not going to happen.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Dan himself
What the fuck?
often communicated directly with fans on his blog, danwarp.blogspot.com.
Where he had his own blog? Dude, I wish I would have known about this when this was going on, bro. So I could have like looked at his creepy ass blog.
Behind the scenes information and did Q&As. He also started giving tons of behind the scenes clips to his Dan Warp YouTube channel, giving us insight on the cast's
Is this channel still up?
uncomfortability around him.
What? It wouldn't be a video from iCarly if I didn't do this to you. I don't know. Oh, yeah. What are you doing?
I don't know.
What's going on? What are you wearing today? Who did your outfit? I've had too much caffeine.
What the fuck?
Don't do anything with this footage. Please, it's so lame.
Did you know that the average adult American male has 18 hairs on each of his toes?
No. This is what happens when it gets late.
Yeah, seriously. Let us go home, Dan.
Yeah.
We would be home.
No, it's caffeine, more like for real.
Had gotten some of your lines right earlier in the day, right? Am I right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who's embarrassed now? Who's embarrassed? No. What are you doing?
I'm scared.
Jeanette.
Hello.
Susie May Page wants to know.
May Page.
Yeah, if you could fill a pool with get out of here.
Sorry.
Wants to know if you could fill a pool with anything you like and swim in it, what would it be and why?
Confetti, because it's a celebration in the pool.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes no sense.
Okay.
Miranda.
It does make sense.
Pineapple juice.
What? I didn't ask the question.
Oh, sorry. Well, I heard. I was thinking this whole time.
Okay, the question is, if you wanted me to hit you with a bottle of something, what would it be? Pineapple juice? Okay, here comes. This is why I'm in Hollywood.
Bro, he's so weird, bro.
Yeah, eat your cereal, kids.
Did she say nice to me?
Look how creepy he is,
Because I will
bro.
taser if necessary.
Uh-oh.
I have the taser. We haven't had to use it in a long time. But
I said lots of nice things.
Oh, I said nice things about you too.
Oh.
He's so weird.
That's gonna get on
Those
TV.
questions.
That's gonna get on TV.
In these clips, you can get a glimpse of Dan's
Ew.
unpredictability. I mean, just look at how Miranda steps away from Dan as he proceeds to make his way around her back, and then hugs her from behind as she stands awkwardly still. As you can see, while Dan is shoving a camera in these actors' faces, they're often confused. Is he joking? Is he angry? Is he creepy? Is he going to touch them or grab them? They look extremely uncertain around him as he talks to them like a classic jester. But iCarly was a massive success for the network throughout its 6 seasons from 2007 to 2000.
It's kind of insane. He's such a fucked up, twisted, dark individual, but he made such like insanely good shows. Like, what the fuck?
12. The pilot episode debuted on Nickelodeon to an audience of 4.1 million, followed by the second episode on the same day with 3.9 million viewers. The show was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Children's Program 5 times, and averaged 4.6 million viewers throughout its time on Nickelodeon. Somehow, Dan managed to outdo Drake and Josh. But looking back on the show, many of the jokes and innuendos were more blatant than we remember.
How long? 3.2 seconds.
Yeah! That's the longest it's ever taken you to beat me.
Or how about the sack, which was Dan making fun of the Snuggie.
You're just sitting on your couch, trying to polish your bowling ball, but your blanket keeps flying off your body.
Oh, my blanket keeps flying off my body.
Like, are we reading into it too much, or is polishing your ball while advertising the sack not strategic? They mentioned that—
Shit, I didn't even think about that. No, that's the next level, bro. What the fuck?
The sack comes in 4 different colors.
The sack comes in rash red, mucus green, pus yellow, or blue.
His shows are always displaying close-ups of feet.
True, there is a lot. I do remember this. I do remember seeing a compilation of how many times there's weird shots of feet angles.
And putting cast members in predicaments where they have to touch each other's feet. Nobody thinks feet are this funny, especially not for them to be such a recurring bit in a television show. Many have pointed out that the Nickelodeon logo at one—
For real, I didn't even think about this. The whole Nickelodeon logo was a fucking foot.
one point was a foot,
oh my
suggesting
God.
that Dan's influence was so strong he got them to change their logo momentarily to his fetish. I even found something on his blog that was particularly interesting. He had a segment called Fun Facts on his blog where he would go through an iCarly script and talk about tiny little details.
Isn't it kind of weird that he would write these like love scripts and these little love stories, all this stuff for like 13-year-old girls?
And why they matter. Like this one where—
That's why there's so many freaks for feet nowadays. Bro! Giraffe, you might be onto something.
He refers to Sam's necklace and how it's made of the same plastic that the antique radios that he collects are made out of. I mention this because it proves that there are no coincidences with what you see on screen. No matter how small or insignificant it may seem, Dan put it there on purpose. In this same episode, which is called I Date a Bad Boy, Dan says, "Scenes begin with Carly and Sam cutting a boy's hair. We see the first of 2 penny teas in this 1-hour episode. This one on Sam says, noodle booty. What does noodle booty mean? Why did Dan specifically point out her shirt and want us to know what it says?" In another blog post, he specifically points out one of his intentionally inappropriate jokes. One where he wrote a joke where an adult woman sexualizes 17-year-old Nathan Kress. Dan writes, "On the first few takes when Jane said her line, 'Hey, those pants fit you real good,' she was looking at the front of his pants. I had the director step in quietly and tell her that, because this is for Nickelodeon, we'd prefer she look at the back of his pants on that line."
What the fuck?
Winky face. I guess Dan thinks that complimenting a young boy's butt is somehow more appropriate. Additionally, take a look at this 2010 blog post where he discusses adults who watch iCarly. He writes, "There are around 150 people who work on iCarly, and none of us approach it like we're making a kids show. We make iCarly no differently than if we were writing and producing a primetime half-hour comedy for NBC, CBS, or any one of the major broadcast networks." This statement directly contradicts what he said while addressing the Quiet on Set documentary.
Some people think that some of those jokes are inappropriate for children. What do you think of that?
Every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny.
So Dan, are the jokes for adults, like you said 10 years ago on your blog, or are they for kids, like you just said recently?
Bro, his YouTubers exposing Dan Schneider.
When the pressure is at an all-time high. It was also during iCarly when 47-year-old Martin Weiss, who managed dozens of child actors, was formally charged with sexually abusing a former client. The victim told police that he had sex with Weiss 30 to 40 times about 6 years ago, and the abuse ended when he turned 15 years old. But Weiss denied that it was rape because the 15-year-old boy showed interest.
You can't make this shit up. Please, good lord.
But the boy said that Martin convinced him that this was common in the industry.
Listen, I think a lot of what Nickelodeon had going for it maybe was not as much as Dan Schneider's writing and jokes, which they were good at times, a lot of great stories. I think their casting department was really good at casting. Maybe Dan was in charge of casting, I don't know who was, but they found some really great, talent.
And denying him would ruin his career. Yet again, a pedophile infiltrated Nickelodeon, and nothing changed. Still, Dan was absolutely dominating. He likely had unimaginable power at the network. Whatever he said goes, but he may have gotten a little too comfortable, maybe even cocky, because his next two shows, Victorious and Sam and Cat, would start to get him. And
yo, dude, no, for real. You can literally see it getting worse and worse. Casting equals trafficking. No, for grooming at this point for him.
A lot of trouble. Schneider was challenged with writing a competitor to Disney Channel's Hannah Montana. Zoe 101 had recently ended, and Dan knew that featured actress Victoria Justice had star power. If there is anything I've learned about kids today, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, it's that they all want to be stars. This direct quote from Dan potentially backs up accusations that he uses these teenagers' desires for stardom to manipulate them. Ironically, the plot of Victorious is about a girl who attends a performing arts school and aspires to be
Did you guys like Victorious?
A famous singer. In 2010, iCarly and Victorious were the top 2 live-action shows on Nickelodeon, helping Nick maintain its 16-year status as the #1 network on all of cable. Victorious aired from 2010 to 2013 through 4 seasons, winning Favorite TV Show at the 2012 and 2013 Kids' Choice Awards, beating out iCarly, as well as receiving 4 Emmy nominations. To the surprise of no one, Dan created another iconic children's TV show, but at what cost?
It's iconic. It wasn't my favorite, but it was iconic. I liked Ariana Grande on it, like every teenage boy,
The show premiered. Nickelodeon Productions partnered with the Columbia Epic label group of Sony Music Entertainment to co-produce the series to develop talent and release their music. Ariana Grande famously got her big break on Victorious. She was the perfect addition to the show due to her amazing singing capabilities. But her role on the show was the airheaded girl who says literally anything that is on her mind. Perfect for Dan to take
I'd watch was iCarly. Is that when you finally gave it up?
Advantage of and
I think Victorious was it for me.
Insert more innuendos.
Sometimes I wonder
Often,
if you can get
I wasn't liked. I didn't watch Sam and Cat.
From a potato.
Yeah, Ariana got it really bad.
Is it possible for a teen?
Like these are all these clips. They're not even showing the worst ones, which is good because it's fucked up the show. And they're all heavily edited and clipped up. Like the YouTuber is clipping them, so you only see a split second of how bad they actually are.
Teenage girl to drink water upside down. I'm thirsty. It's not possible.
This clip of Dan and the Victorious cast behind the scenes has been dissected many times over the years, where Ariana and Elizabeth Gillis seem visibly uncomfortable due to Dan's presence.
That was one of the better things I've ever heard.
Bro, she pulled her hair over her shoulders. That's a sign she doesn't want him looking her up and down, getting turned on.
Hi, what's going on here?
Cut out that part.
Why are you sitting on the floor of the set?
Ariana is constantly looking around, covering up her body as Dan towered over her. Many in the comments speculate that Liz started causing distractions so that Dan wouldn't do whatever they seemed to be afraid of. However, Liz Gillis actually ended up marrying a Nickelodeon producer that she met on the set of Victorious. Michael Corcoran is a very close friend to Dan.
What the fuck? How old was
Schneider.
she?
He wrote the theme songs for iCarly and Victorious. Liz and Michael began dating in 2012 when she was 18 and he was 40. They did meet on set before she was 18, which leads many to believe that she was groomed, but they are still together to this day.
Damn!
According to Jeanette McCurdy, Schneider regularly compared the iCarly cast to that of Victorious. The Victorious kids get drunk together all the time. The iCarly kids are so wholesome. We need to give you guys a little edge, Schneider said, according to McCurdy. Now, supplying minors with alcohol is a major accusation. There is definitely a lot of online evidence showing
Dude, what the fuck? That's insane.
Showing that the Victorious cast
if you're 40 and you meet and you're on set writing and you're like the employer, the boss of a child, even so, another power play. Not only that, and then once she turns 18, you start dating her, and you're like, what? That's kind of crazy. Like, you knew her when she was like 15, 16 years old, and you're already over 20 years older than her. Literally 22 plus years.
Very close,
That's crazy.
Often mingling and hanging out after hours, but whether or not they are drunk is impossible to determine. However, the actor who portrayed Beck on Victorious may have confirmed McCurdy's statements on a TikTok that read, "When you don't remember the plotline to a single Victorious episode, but you remember going out partying every night." Daniela Monet, who played the lead's older sister, Trina Vega, told Insider that some of the actors' outfits on the show were not age appropriate, and that she wouldn't even wear some of that today as an adult. Daniela also recalled a time when she contacted Nickelodeon about a Victorious scene where she ate a pickle while applying lip gloss. She expressed concern to the network that it was too sexual to air, but Nickelodeon aired it anyway. And in case you were wondering if Dan ever slowed down on his foot content, no. He actually ramped it up.
There was hella foot content in Victorious.
Spread your toes, girl.
What the
I still say this is not performing.
How about two girls fighting over a guy's foot while he sings a song?
Wow, they're really soft. Nurses, feel these kids' feet.
But it was around 2012 and 2013 when people online finally started to question what was going on at Nickelodeon. I believe it was due to Amanda Bynes' very public downward spiral. It was around this time she made headlines for her first DUI, assaulting a member of the paparazzi, being seen in public looking disheveled and distraught. Then she was evicted from her New York City apartment, and she got some strange dimple piercings and even posted lewd photos that were not very flattering. In short, people were saying that she was going crazy, and naturally they started to question the children's television industry that she grew up in. An infamous blind item appeared on the Crazy Days and Nights blog of someone trying to warn the public about Dan. He's a monster, the worst predator alive, and if you wonder why nobody will confront or charge him, he's in charge of multiple hit shows for Nick, which rakes in oceans of money. What about the parents? No tweener parent who shoved their kid into the limelight from birth is going to cross him either and risk career.
Most of these kids are in their situations they are because their parents are so hungry for money or this or that, like whatever reason it is.
And loss of revenue, no matter how bad it F's up the kids. It was also around this time that a Redditor alleged that Dan offered them $100 to tickle their feet while on set of one of his shows. Now, none of these claims were backed by any real or substantial evidence, but it did get people talking. Media outlets finally began speaking out, questioning the intentions of children's TV, specifically pointing to the sexual nature of Victorious. Those designer threads often have an adult sexiness that unsuccessfully straddles the line between tasteful and trampy. While guys are allowed to be quirky and weird looking, girls are uniformly cast from the same Bratz doll mold. Meanwhile, you had Dan posting things on his blog like, "But what Kat does in this scene is a special variation of the spit take, where the liquid just falls out of her mouth. Yes, this is what I do for a living. I analyze the various kinds of spit takes. Not a bad job." Smiley face. After this quote from Dan, we now know that this photo, which is on the official Zoe 101 IMD page showing Victoria Justice with spit falling out of her mouth, is probably his creation. You also had people in the early 2010s analyzing his old tweets, ones where he was constantly talking about people's feet and toes. This toe belongs to one of the stars on one of my shows. Whose toe?
What the fuck? Why does he have this weird picture of their toe? What the hell?
Is this? To which he later tweeted, "The toe belongs to the sweet and hilariously talented Miss Jeanette McCurdy."
What the fuck?
Sam and Cat tomorrow. Right on the bottom of your foot, take a pic and use hashtag #SamandCatSaturday. We will retweet and follow until our fingers get sore. I also found this extremely old Pepsi commercial Dan starred in the late 80s, which potentially features an innuendo with the lotion shot. blood splattering on the guy's chest. Then the focus of the entire commercial being on his feet not wanting to touch the sand because it's hot. And of course, there's females in the background in their bikinis. Dan was unaware of the digital renaissance aiming to take him down, and he was as reckless as ever. iCarly was officially over, and Victorious was scheduled to end a few months later. Schneider decided to hit two birds with one stone and make a dual spin-off for both shows. He took a fan favorite from iCarly in Sam Puckett and a fan favorite from Victorious in Cat Valentine, and created a teen sitcom titled Sam and Cat. The premise of the show revolved around the unlikely friendship of Sam and Cat, who meet and become roommates in Los Angeles while starting their own babysitting business to make ends meet, which is basically the same plot as his failed primetime sitcom from the 90s. The pilot debuted on Nickelodeon to 4.2 million viewers and was surprisingly popular despite being a spin-off that was clearly inferior to its original shows. However, Sam and Cat only lasted one season and was canceled following controversy behind it.
I remember seeing a couple episodes, definitely watched a little bit, but I don't remember. I can't remember anything from
scenes. Firstly, Jeanette McCurdy posted this strange Vine.
Hey Dan Schneider, I know you're watching my Vine. Do you like my Vine? Vine. Look what you've done to me.
Considering she would speak out against him 10 years
what the fuck?
later, we now know this was not our imagination. He was really making her crazy. In her 2022 memoir,
yeah, I told you there's a book.
Glad My Mom Died, McCurdy detailed her childhood and how her mother, Deborah, forced her to become a child actor. Schneider was also mentioned in the memoir solely as the creator, who McCurdy claimed created an unsafe work environment, frequently subjecting the cast and crew to emotional abuse. When Jeanette turned 18 and iCarly was coming to an end, the creator allegedly dangled the opportunity for Jeanette to have her own spin-off. She wrote that the creator took her out to dinner, where he encouraged her to try alcohol for the first time and gave her a shoulder massage. The creator is doing that thing that I've heard
and being offered $300,000 by Nickelodeon to keep it all quiet.
Heard from my co-stars he does with every new star of a show that he's making. He takes you under his wing. You're his favorite. Additionally, there was a feud between Ariana and Jeanette brewing behind the scenes. On Jeanette's podcast, she discussed her time on Sam and Cat, revealing that she was jealous of Ariana Grande because executives allowed her the opportunity to pursue other business ventures while restricting McCurdy's career advancement. Every time something exciting happens to her, I feel like she robbed me of having that experience myself. And every time someone calls me a good sport, all I feel is how much I don't want to be one. Ariana misses work in pursuit of her music career while I act with a box. I'm pissed about it, and I'm pissed at her, jealous of her. In case you're wondering, one episode of Sam and Cat was based around Cat getting trapped in a box, and Sam spent the whole episode trying to get her out. The writers had to come up with an episode without her because Ariana was busy with her music career and couldn't film. This show getting canceled after one very successful season was likely due to this feud, but I'm sure Dan's behavior towards Jeanette and Ariana made it easy for them to sever ties with Nickelodeon. This basically marks the end of Dan's dominance at the network. He was recognized for his 20 years of work at Nickelodeon with their very first Lifetime Achievement Award in 2014. For the few online that were aware of the rumors surrounding Dan, this award rubbed them the wrong way. Slowly in 2014 and after, we saw more media coverage pointing out inappropriate moments in his shows. But again, the masses, the general public, had no idea what he was doing. And for a few years,
I'm actually kind of like, I wish they showed some of the clips so you could see how bad it was.
People stopped talking about him online until 2017, when the Harvey Weinstein Me Too movement shook industry predators to their core.
Bro, the other day I was talking about something with Ben. I was like, oh, it brought up Harvey Weinstein. Ben was like, who is that? I'm like, do you really not know who that is? And he really just didn't know who this was.
And Dan tried to make it out unscathed. In October of 2017, investigative reports by the New York Times and the New Yorker exposed decades of sexual harassment, assault, and misconduct allegations against film producer Harvey Weinstein. This prompted bloggers who knew about Dan's history to discuss him once again. More blind items from the Crazy Days and Nights blog emerged, like this one that suggests Dan, the producer, was sleeping with cast members. A producer who has been featured on this site from almost the very beginning. When she landed the part, the producer never mentioned anything about sleeping with her. All but one of them were underage.
I mean, it happened in 2017, so how old were you? You were a kid, I mean. You probably had other shit going on.
She suspected that because she was legal for almost the entire run of the show, that he was just not that into her. At some point, he did try and sleep with her and she turned him down. That rejection cost her a bunch of scene reductions. Meanwhile, the producer found someone else to sleep with who was also legal but loved to roleplay super young. She was getting the good lines and scenes. She was being offered crossover opportunities and new shows were being developed for her. And again, this could just be people spreading lies, but now the pressure was on. And Nickelodeon, Dan Schneider, They could feel the heat. Websites like The Revenge of the Sis became fully dedicated to exposing the creepy nature of the Nickelodeon network. Coincidentally, as the pressure was at an all-time high, Nickelodeon cut ties with Dan Schneider in March of 2018 and paid him the $7 million still owed on his contract.
Damn.
They claim this separation was a natural next step, and they are proud of the work he did for Nickelodeon. Deadline Hollywood reported that there had been
They're taking their money, he made them, and they're running.
Complaints about Schneider's alleged behavior, including his well-documented temper issues for years. Following reports that Nickelodeon and Schneider parted ways, Dan's Twitter account went quiet. He only rarely made public appearances. He also tried to erase everything on his blog, but we still got that. Nickelodeon Studios even released its reboot of iCarly for the Paramount Plus streaming platform without Schneider. From Dan's exit in 2018 until today,
I didn't watch iCarly Plus because I just felt like I should let that memory die in my mind, and I didn't want to be let down. I heard it was bad. I was just like, no.
YouTubers, bloggers, previous cast members, and media outlets greatly contributed to informing the public about Dan's ways. Perhaps the most detailed and detrimental article was the 2022 Business Insider Deep Dive, which interviewed 15 of Dan's former co-workers, some of which spoke horrible things and others defended his character. Dan cared about the kids on his shows even when sometimes their own families unfortunately did not. Russell Hicks, Nickelodeon's former president of content and production, wrote, "He was the shoulder they cried on when something happened to them. He understood what they were going through." Schneider drew hours away from writing scripts and instead spent time mingling with the stars on his shows, taking them out to dinner and inviting them to his house for holiday parties. It became so frequent that some of Schneider's colleagues questioned the amount of time he spent interacting with young actors. While Dan focused on being accepted by the children on his shows, several writers and crew members claim Schneider created an
I feel like since he was a child actor, his mental state got frozen in time, and he was an extra on the show, so he always just wanted to be the main character, and he also had all these weird sexual things, and so he's just playing out his childhood fantasy and just being bizarre and fucked up.
Uncomfortable, bizarre environment, regularly demanding 14-plus hour days and expected writers and crew members to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. More disturbing was Schneider's behavior towards female crew members, reportedly hugging them for extended periods as a joke, making people uncomfortable. Schneider also requested massages from adult female colleagues during his tenure at the network, according to several Nickelodeon staffers. Kerry Mellon, who worked as a costumer on Schneider's shows for 14 years, said Schneider received weekly massages from a third member of the costume team. They also claimed that Schneider would ask
Imagine being doing wardrobe for costumes, you can get massaged some big fat creepy goblin man.
The women to give him a massage by reaching under his shirt. Despite claims that he fostered a hostile work environment, Schneider's shows at Nickelodeon were greenlighted because of his influence within the company. On-set employees rarely pushed back against Schneider. Another writer said, "Because you just didn't cross Dan. He was a really scary presence." However, it took all the way until the Quiet on Set documentary before Dan ever responded to any of these allegations. But during this 20-minute interview, he basically only admits to being mean to his writers.
I would snap at people sometimes. I would be snarky when I could have given them a nicer answer. I would not give people the time that they needed. I would be in too big a hurry to get on to the next thing I had to do. And watching that show, it made me, there were so many times I wanted to pick up a phone and call some of those people and say, "I'm so sorry, and let's talk about it, and I wish you'd had a better time, and I wish I could have shown you a better experience."
The rest of this conversation was him deflecting blame. He said that his inappropriate jokes were approved by the executives at Nickelodeon that were above him, and they didn't think the jokes were inappropriate at the time. But he also said that since people are upset about those jokes, that he's okay with erasing them, which makes people wonder, are they inappropriate or not? He claims he had no knowledge of any sexual assault that any of his previous cast members experienced, but he did admit to demanding massages.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday, it was disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation. And even additionally, I apologize to the people who were walking around Video Village or wherever they happened, because there were lots of people there who witnessed it who also may have felt uncomfortable. So I owe them an apology as well.
Yeah.
He 100% wholeheartedly admitted that he forced people to touch
That's such a weird phenomenon going on, Maya.
him, which is interesting because it becomes very difficult to believe that he would stop there. Perhaps the craziest part about this video is that there's still so much more that I could cover. Some people's entire YouTube channels are dedicated to bringing Dan's dark secrets to light, but I do want to leave off with this message. Just remember that it's easy to think that this is all just entertainment because, well, these allegations feature some of our favorite child stars. Remember that they were real victims that had to suffer. People have gotten so wrapped up and excited about this expose that they're now blaming innocent people for being complicit in these alleged crimes. For example, Zoe 101 star Matthew Underwood was getting death threats for not speaking out against Dan Schneider. So to prove to these people that he is innocent, he voiced 2 different times where he was sexually assaulted as a minor. So now after hearing many of the allegations, the rumors, the testimonies, the convictions, the confessions surrounding Dan Schneider's time on Nickelodeon, is it all just a coincidence, a conspiracy, or a calculated crime conglomerate?
I feel like...
Is it a coincidence?
I feel like I would have made a better video on this if I had the time and energy and the resources to research, because, like, I feel like they never cover the gravity. They're just, like, talking about the situation so casually. Like, this definitely more intricate, more dark, there's more secrets, there's more people who know things, obviously. Because, like, just in our own personal lives, like, you know, it's like just your own friend groups and stuff that's gone down at parties, clubs, get together, or behind closed doors with, like, girlfriends, exes, boyfriends. Like, you know, there's so many dramas, so many, like, webs of lies and circles, things you gotta work around, and, like, so you know, something on this big of a scale is probably even bigger, you know what I mean? Like, you know how fucking twisted things can get in our own personal lives. Imagine when there's shit like that going down.